Good morning and or good afternoon. We are going to be starting this very interesting, deep, and dynamic coursework. A lot of the teachings that you're going to learn within this coursework are channeled, and so they are not things that you're going to have heard before. They're not things that you will be familiar with. And the beginning of the work is going to be deep and groundbreaking. And when we say groundbreaking, what we mean is that sometimes when we have certain beliefs, as everyone knows, those beliefs go unrecognized by ourselves. And with beliefs that are unrecognized, they have this interesting influence that tends to be pervasive because the concepts that you're unaware of that dominate your life, when you're unaware of them, they act as a foundation for many hidden actions, relationships, reactions, and really kind of network themselves into the small places within your life. So this coursework is about, first and foremost, identifying abusive and addictive patterns. You hear that word a lot. You hear the word addiction. You hear the word abuse. And so we have to identify for you exactly what it is that we're meaning by these terms. And the reason why is because modern psychology thinks of abuse as something that's affecting you that causes trauma. This is true in a certain respect, but we're going to get to the subtle places inside of yourself where you have yet to shift and to change your own personal influence in the cycles that continue to rock your life. Here in our teachings, personal autonomy and personal responsibility are the foundation of everything that we do. So the ground rule here with this course is to not point the finger out, not to see yourself as a victim, and to not consider yourself stuck or imprisoned by other people's effect upon you. In fact, as you know, if you're a spiritual person, everything is in your power. And wherever you experience a lack of power, there is something beneath it where you're blaming other people or you're holding other people responsible for the blockages in your life. This work is going to be a step-by-step guide in trauma to relieve yourself from it so that you can have a breakthrough outside of those cycles of trauma, and that you can have lasting relationships that bring you back to your self-love, to your light, and to your fire. We really want you to know going into this program that the purpose here is not to get deep into the mire of things that might have occurred to you. We do start out that way. We're going to start out deep. We're going to start out identifying blockages and barriers for us to shake up that groundwork. The purpose of it is to ignite your self-love and to bring your personal fire back so that you feel and experience freedom. From that freedom, with a spiritual perspective, arises the possibility of romance, of intimacy, and creativity in your life. We look to create a flow in these things for you, and that is why you're here, is to network yourself through any hidden things where you're still, unbeknownst to yourself, or maybe you know, replaying the same patterns over and over and over again. With our technique that we're teaching you, what makes it different is that because we have this work coming from a foundation of not religion and not Christianity, forgive me if I love Christians, it's all good, but those Christian concepts tend to be part of the abusive cycle, to tell you the truth. Religious concepts are part of the abusive cycle. Any concept that's been handed to you is part of the abusive cycle. And how these cycles play out in your life is they keep you replaying the same problems. With the work applied to self-consciousness and awareness of your physical health, your emotional well-being, from the influence of the mystery, from the influence of spirit, and from the influence of the magic that we in our tradition practice, there is like that missing piece that actually works. It actually works to break through cycles of abuse, and it works to break through addictions. And what you're going to find is, as we identify this, we're going to get into the psychology and the physiology and the spiritual attachment that people have to recommitting their cycles of trauma upon themselves. What happens with this is that people get stuck. And when you're stuck, you yourself become the cause of those cycles replaying themselves over and over again in your life. What you're going to find is that the reason why you haven't been able to break those cycles is because you, in and of itself, you yourself are physiologically addicted to those cycles. So we're going to start with this. We're going to start with understanding what the abusive cycle is. And where you want to feel this in your heart is you want to feel this like there is wholeness within you, and that wholeness has been eroded, and the seeking of that wholeness is the premise of your spiritual journey. The seeking of law and order and containment, control and isolation, stability, the kind of stability that comes from rock and mortar and bricks, as opposed to the stability that comes from being within the garden of your journey. There is a stability that comes from being the rose in the garden, or being the tree, or that wild flower. And that has a cycle to it that is natural, a natural cycle of life, death, and rebirth. And then there's these corrosive cycles, and those corrosive cycles are cycles of entrapment and predictability. And that entrapment and that predictability has no life to it. It can only contain its purpose, and it contains its purpose of rigidity in a rigid way. And when the earth moves, and when the waters pour, and when the sands of time flow, those are the first structures to fall, because they're not structures based on nature. They're structures that are based on controlling nature. And when individuals control nature, they control the cycle of things. That is the pathway to harm, because nature has a wisdom to it that is vast, and individual humans and people that are existing incarnated bodies have a very small perspective, have a perspective that is very, very personal, and we can't control the tides of time. But we can be within our own nature and flow with the greater good, with what people would call the divine, or what people would call God. So the ancients knew this prior to the need for such strong structures which keep a system in order. The ancients knew this, we know this, and they're simple intellectual and highly intelligent laws to how we become full, how we become adults, how we live a full life, a life of prosperity that is in unison with the flow of nature. A life of prophecy, which works with the higher good, works with the divine. The art of knowing, which goes beyond the art of thinking. So as we're working away at the wholeness, we're not taking away pieces of knowledge. We're not taking away courses of action. We're not taking away the power of planning and manifestation and creation. We're including and bringing in ancient truths which will allow you to have a greater intelligence, which will allow you to have a larger framework to work with in your life, and will allow you to have longevity with love, with relationship and community. And I say this because sometimes when we speak about religion or we speak about society or systems, the mind obviously goes to the opposite, the simple opposite: no system, no family, no society, no religion. That is a very black and white way of thinking of things. So we're not saying to be its opposite. We're saying to go beyond it into a stronger realm of wisdom. And wisdom, as Papa just pointed out, exists within three components. And those three components, they're already working for you, and you're ritualized around them. You have systems and you have ways that you continuously work these three components, but you're unaware of it. And so we're going to illuminate what those systems are so that you can actually grab onto this great, beautiful wisdom and use it to become more committed, to become more empowered, and to become more free to accomplish, free to make choices, and free to be empowered from that aspect of self-love. So we're going to look right now at what abuse is. And when we're talking about this, we're not just talking about people. We're not talking about abusers like people abusing you. We're including that, but we're also talking about an illness that you might have that is repetitive. We're talking about a spiritual attack that you might be undergoing that is repetitive. What people love saying right now, anxiety. The effect of anxiety upon you. That anxiety is abusive. It is an abusive cycle. Food addictions. That food, as it works in your system and it comes into your system and it causes a whole world of harm for you, that's an abusive cycle. Certainly drugs and alcohol can be very toxic on your system. Negative thinking cycles can be an abusive cycle upon yourself. And self-depreciation is a big one. And that's a big one for spiritual workers, because spiritual workers tend to be almost addicted to helping other people. And they constantly are running up against experiencing never being good enough, either for themselves or for their clients. That is the wrong way to be living your spiritual journey. So any illness, any outside thing that you're taking and or concept that entraps you, that is toxic for you, that harms you, we're calling the abuser, okay? So, and also people. It may be actual people and relationships in your life, current or past. So, when we say the word abuser, you want to include everything that might be a negative influence on you, essentially. There are some things in your life that are really, really good for you that you do not want to mistake for abuse. And so that's something that you really want to watch out for. That, again, that you're not pointing the finger out at other people, right? Because certain things that you believe might not be that empowering for you really could be the best things that have ever happened to you. If you feel that way, and if you've undergone situations and you come out the other side being like, man, I'm really glad that that took place for me, you're not in the abusive cycle because you're empowered. You're mentally empowered. You're emotionally empowered. You empowered yourself. So we're going to begin today with identifying what the abusive cycle is. And here's what you want to know, is that abusers typically be insecure. They seem like they're dominating and they seem like they're overbearing, but abusers are very, very, very insecure. And what they need, and they have a need that's an undying, unfulfilling need, they have a need to be needed. They desire to be wanted. And no matter what you give to them, they will never feel safe. No matter how much you give that abuser, they will never feel safe. Safe means to be satiated, to be quelled, to be calmed. So abusers know your secrets. They know your powers. They know your insecurities. And they use them to turn other people against you. And they will try to harm you and then blame you for the harm happening in your life. They will become extremely desperate if you try to leave the abuse. The whole world for them, they become infatuated and they will attack by blaming you and will work so that you never get what you need. The abuser will never, ever get better. Nothing you do to help a person or a spirit or a situation or an alcohol problem, so on and so forth. Nothing you do to make that energy or that entity or that person happy will ever work. There is absolutely nothing you can do to help them. Nothing. For those of you who are therapists, when you have somebody who's addicted to the abusive cycle, no matter how much you work to help them, they will never get better. Because if they get better, they will not get what they need. And what they need is to feel wanted. How they feel wanted is to keep the abusive cycle going. For those of you that are coaches, no matter how much you coach these people, they will always self-sabotage. They will never get better. However, these are the clients and the people that receive the most attention from the people that are trying to help them. Abusers will keep you hanging. They will keep you unable to meet your own goals, and they will work to sabotage everything that you do for them. They will never ever get you what you need. As a healer, as a spirit worker, as a therapist, as a coach, what you need is to be successful with your work. That is what you need. These people, these spirits, these cycles that you're in of sabotage will continue to be very intelligent and will work to find out exactly what you want, to give you a taste that you've accomplished it, and then swiftly take it away. In the taking it away, you get reinvested in helping them even more. That reinvestment of your own life force and your own energy pours into them, and for a moment, they'll let you believe that you helped them a little bit. So this is something that's really powerful about what Papa is always saying, and what he's taught me very, very, very clearly. And I am one of the most successful individuals that he's trained because I take the teachings extremely seriously. And the clients that I see have positive results, no matter what. And the reason why is because he's taught me so well that there is no me in the mix. Okay? So when there's no you in the mix, you can't be a victim of your own cycles. You can't be a victim of somebody else's abusive, addictive, violent patterns. And I say violent because if you think about it, it's a very violent, traumatic cycle, this whole thing. It affects people in such a way that burnout occurs, people get overwhelmed and they stop counseling, they stop being coaches, they even stop doing spiritual work, or do so much spiritual work for other people that they completely let go of all of the good things in their life that keep themselves healthy and nurtured and happy. So what it is that he teaches, and we're going to give you a format for building this for yourself throughout this course, he teaches that as a spirit worker, you make yourself not there. It is the mystery, it is the channeling, it is the soul of the spirit that comes through us. And with that higher power, these cycles fall away quite naturally. And you don't have to be stuck in them quite naturally. And that is a very, very beautiful thing that just, again, needs a couple of tools for you to be able to make that occur. So with you in the mix, the abuser works to understand you. It works to analyze you, to find out what you're insecure about. And the moment that they realize that you've helped them, they'll create chaos. Chaos is something that is a very powerful tool that confuses the person who's being affected by the abuser. And again, this goes for spirits, this goes for people, it goes for businesses, institutions, bosses, so on and so forth. So the abuser's way of keeping you dependent on them and keeping you needing them is to create a cycle of chaos. And that chaos makes you want to help them even more. And when you help them even more, you get re-hooked back into their cycle. This is why pretty much abusers do everything they can to promise to change. They will even help you as much as possible, but they will never follow through on their promises, and therefore they create a cycle of chaos. This is not because they're victims or they're incapable of doing these things or keeping their word or, keeping their honor and their commitments. It's because it is through overwhelm and suffering. They use overwhelm and suffering to create a waiting pattern. And it's in that waiting pattern that they have space to begin to feed on the negativity. The other factor is that abusers will be unwilling to let you be needed by other people. They like to be the focus of attention.